The air in the Israelite camp crackled with tension. For 40 days, a hulking Philistine warrior, Goliath, had taunted them, his booming voice a constant thrum of fear. King Saul, a man once chosen for his stature and strength, now paced his tent, his face a mask of impotent rage. His soldiers, a sea of anxious faces, huddled together, their eyes fixed on the distant, menacing figure of Goliath. "This cannot stand," Saul declared, his voice echoing in the confined space. "Who will face this blasphemer?" His gaze swept over his generals, but they averted their eyes, their courage as thin as worn cloth. Meanwhile, in the hills of Bethlehem, a young shepherd named David was bringing provisions to his brothers, who served in Saul's army. David was lean and weathered, his hands roughened by years of tending sheep, but his eyes held a spark of unwavering faith and a deep-seated courage. He heard the taunts of Goliath from afar and the fear that gripped his own people. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine?" David asked, his voice clear and steady, "that he should defy the armies of the living God?" His brothers chided him, telling him to return to his sheep, but David's heart burned with a righteous anger. He approached Saul, not with arrogance, but with a quiet determination. "Your Majesty," David said, bowing low, "I will go and fight this Philistine." Saul looked at the boy, barely more than a youth, clad in simple shepherd's garb. He scoffed. "You, a mere boy? Goliath is a warrior from his youth. You cannot possibly go and fight this Philistine." But David's conviction was unshakable. "When I was a shepherd, I would go out against the lion and the bear and kill them. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul, desperate and seeing a flicker of hope, reluctantly agreed. He offered David his own armor, a heavy, ornate set that dwarfed the young shepherd. David tried it on, but it was cumbersome, hindering his movements. He shed it, choosing instead his shepherd's staff, his sling, and 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream. As David walked towards Goliath, the Philistine warrior roared with laughter. "Am I a dog?" Goliath bellowed, "that you come at me with sticks?" He cursed David by his gods. David, however, stood firm. "You come against me with sword and with spear and with javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head." With a swift, practiced motion, David swung his sling. A stone whizzed through the air, striking Goliath squarely on the forehead. The giant stumbled, then fell, his mighty body crashing to the ground. David, with no sword of his own, ran to Goliath, took the Philistine's sword, and severed his head. The Philistines, witnessing their champion's demise, turned and fled in terror. The Israelites, their hearts swelling with newfound courage, pursued them, their cheers of victory echoing across the valley. The victory brought David immense popularity. The people sang, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." This praise, instead of fostering humility in Saul, ignited his jealousy. He saw David not as a hero who had saved them all, but as a threat to his throne. "David has made himself king," Saul muttered to his advisers, his eyes burning with suspicion. "He has brought me down to the lowest of the low." Saul's pride and insecurity festered. He began to treat David with open hostility, his actions becoming increasingly reckless. He commanded David to serve in his army, yet also kept him close, as if to keep an eye on him. One day, while David was playing the lyre to soothe Saul's troubled spirit, the king, in a fit of rage, hurled a spear at David, intending to pin him to the wall. David, nimble and aware, dodged the deadly projectile. This act of violence was not an isolated incident. Saul repeatedly tried to kill David. David, though a victim of Saul's madness, never retaliated with violence against his king. He understood the sanctity of the Lord's anointed. When he had the opportunity to kill Saul in a cave, he spared him, cutting off only a piece of Saul's robe as proof of his mercy. "The Lord judge between me and you," David declared to Saul afterwards, his voice filled with sorrow rather than triumph. "But my hand will not be on you. As the old saying goes, out of the wicked comes wickedness, but my hand will not be on you." Saul, for a moment, seemed remorseful, acknowledging David's righteousness. But his pride, his ingrained disobedience to God's commands, and his consuming jealousy soon resurfaced. He continued to pursue David, driven by his own demons. This relentless pursuit, fueled by Saul's flawed character, ultimately led to his downfall. In a final desperate battle against the Philistines, Saul, wounded and defeated, chose to fall on his own sword rather than be captured. His recklessness, his disobedience to God's word, and his overwhelming pride had cost him everything. David, upon hearing of Saul's death, did not rejoice. Instead, he mourned deeply, composing a lament for Saul and his son Jonathan, his loyal friend. His humility and selflessness shone through even in victory. He did not seize the throne immediately, but waited for God's timing. When he was finally crowned king of Israel, he ruled with justice, wisdom, and a deep reliance on God. The story of David and Saul is a timeless reminder. It shows us that true courage comes not from physical strength, but from faith and a righteous heart. David's humility and selflessness in the face of adversity, his refusal to succumb to bitterness or revenge, allowed him to rise above his challenges. Conversely, Saul's pride, his jealousy, and his disobedience blinded him, leading him down a path of destruction. In our own lives, we face Goliaths, challenges, setbacks, and even the struggles within ourselves. Like David, we can choose to face them with courage, humility, and a steadfast faith, knowing that true victory lies not in defeating others, but in overcoming ourselves and living according to what is right. And like Saul, we can be consumed by our own pride and insecurities, leading to our own self-inflicted downfalls. The choice, as always, is ours.